Okay, the next section we're going to go over in this training is basements and crawl spaces. And what we're looking for, we kind of touched on it earlier, but we're going to walk through it a little bit deeper in this section here. So you'd like to see everything clean and dry and not cracking or failing, vented properly, not growing mold, where you can get into a crawl space and, not be laying in water or mud or things like that. Common issues would be, water getting in, there's no sump pump, so you'd want to call out, get a sump pump. If the wall's failing, you'd want to call that out and recommend that the wall be repaired or replaced. Same thing with venting. If it's not breathing properly, you'd want to get some sort of venting in there. And if you see any microbial growth, you definitely want to call that out too. Termite damage is common. Mold's common in these kind of crawl spaces and basements. Once again, pretty straightforward common sense. If you see the piers failing, rotten wood, mold, insulation that's not proper, termite damage, all of those kind of things just need to be called out because they're hurting the building, and there's certainly health and safety issues, and they're not going to fix themselves. So call them out, put them on the bid, get it fixed, roll it into the loan. If you look at a crawl space or a basement, the key things would be moisture, mold, and insects. If the moisture is taken care of, the water's draining properly, most of the time it's not going to fail the structure, it's not going to put hydraulic pressure on the walls, it's not going to cause cracks and deterioration. If the water's getting away from the home, it's draining properly, it's venting properly, the likelihood of you getting mold is way less than a building that's not properly vented and water's getting in there. And then obviously, even if you've done everything right, you can still get termites or beetles or all kinds of insects that can eat the house or deteriorate the house. So take a look at that. You can call an exterminator, fix any damaged components that were eaten by the insects, and get them all taken care of. But those are the kind of your three major things that you're looking for basements and crawl spaces. And then what do you need to remember? Look at all your load points. Make sure they're adequate and they're supported properly. Make sure your framing, your joist, your headers, your rafters, all the framing is proper and holding proper load. You want to make sure your insulation and your vapor barriers are in place so it's properly insulated, it's protected from moisture. Proper ventilation and discharge, make sure water's not getting where it's not supposed to go. And then moisture control, drainage, and mold. There's mechanical drainage, there's gravity drainage, there's all kinds of ways to get the water out and away from the home so it's not causing moisture issues and mold. And then obviously any damage caused by pests like termites or beetles, it can just be fixed, replaced. And then any rotten or deteriorating structures. A lot of times the sill plates will be rotten or floors underneath bathrooms and kitchens. So just look for those trouble areas. It kind of shows up over and over and over again. Kind of the same stuff happens with all these homes. So most of it's moisture related, venting related, it's been built wrong or not properly holding load. All of those things cause these additional issues. So if you address all the basic components of a home and they're all structurally sound and they're safe and they're not a health or safety issue and they're working properly as designed, you'll be in good shape. So just call them out, put them on the bid, document them so that everybody knows what you're calling out. Don't just say fix floor joist. You would want to say fix the floor joist that's rotten underneath the bathroom tub or in the crawl space or in the attic. So just be detailed with what you call it out, document it, and give it a good description so everybody knows exactly what you're talking about and exactly what needs to be on the bid. Okay, now we're going to talk about insulation systems. Basically making sure the home is adequately insulated. Each area of the country has a little bit different standards. Obviously, if it's colder versus warmer, you'd want more insulation if you're in a colder climate. But at the same time, if you're in a hot climate, you definitely always want good insulation because it's going to cut down on your heating and cooling bills. So insulation's important. When you're dealing with FHA minimum property standards or most lending property standards, they're going to kind of fall to what the local code is. So if you kind of know what local code is, so if you've got 2x4 walls and it's R13 insulation and that's code, then as long as that's in there, you're fine. Obviously, you'd like to see more, but what we're talking about here is minimum property standards. So what's the bare minimum that has to be done to this structure in order for it to function and to pass the lender? So when you're dealing with insulation, you don't want anything rotten, exposed, not installed properly, but it doesn't have to be like top of the line foam insulation. As long as it meets local code, you should be fine. Okay, the next section are the mechanical systems. This is plumbing, heating, cooling, electrical, all of those systems we're going to call mechanicals. The minimum property standard for mechanicals is everything has to work. So for example, the furnace has to work. Now with FHA, you don't need an air conditioning system because it's not required. So if the furnace is working, but the air conditioning is not, that still passes FHA's minimum property standards. Obviously, most people want the furnace and the air conditioning to work because it's more comfortable, but it's not a requirement. As far as electrical, we'll dive into that, and plumbing too. It all has to work. You can't have leaking pipes. You can't have failing systems or outdated, corroded pipes, those kind of things. So let's dive into these mechanical systems, because these are systems that are kind of working systems in the house, and they do get a little bit more wear and tear, and they are prone to fail. And let's dive into them. So a lot of things that we see would be old fuse boxes, that won't pass. Knob and tube wiring, same thing, that won't pass. If there's a breaker panel and there's a missing knockout, that won't pass. Someone could put their finger in there and get shocked. A Gfci, which are like a ground fault protected outlet near any wet areas, bathrooms, kitchens, any place where there's a sink and a faucet, you'll want a GFI. If there's missing cover plates, if the outlets are not three-pronged, if you look at this outlet here on the top right, you got a two-prong outlet, there's no ground. Okay, so that needs to be changed out. That box needs to be grounded. If you look at this bottom right corner, these wires are exposed. Someone could get in there and grab them. If you just put a cover plate on this box, that would pass. So you're looking for minimum property standards, health and safety issues, grounding, people can't stick their fingers in things, up to code electrical, no knob and tube, and up to code breaker panel boxes, no fuses, you want breakers. Outlets, three-prong, properly grounded, and GFIs near wet areas. If you follow that kind of rule, you'll be fine. Make sure they're covered, cover plated, no loose hanging wires, nothing where you can grab onto it. Everything needs to be covered up. And then lighting, same thing here. It doesn't have to be the Taj Mahal. It just needs to function. So when you walk into the room and you flip the light switch, the light works. Okay, there's sometimes where there's just a hot plug, which means there's no light in the ceiling, and there's a live plug where a lamp gets plugged in, and then when you walk in the room, you hit the switch and the light comes on if there's a lamp. That'll pass, okay, but you need to have a hot plug if there's no light in the ceiling. Same thing with stairwells and pass-throughs, and you want to make sure that the wiring is I'm going to say up to code. Now, we're not code enforcers, but use common sense. If you got to walk down a dark set of basement steps to get down to the basement to find the light switch at the bottom of the steps, it's not a good idea. That's a health and safety issue. Someone could fall, trip by the time they get down there because they didn't have adequate lighting. So just use common sense. Is it health and safety related? Is it safe? Can someone get hurt? Can they put their finger in something? Can they get shocked unexpectedly? If that's the case, then it just needs to be fixed. It's part of the FHA minimum property standards from an electrical standpoint. The panel boxes, they need to have a proper cover, have to have proper knockouts, the screws all need to be there. So everything just needs to be functioning properly. And we just went over this as far as the GFI outlets, health and safety issues. The other thing you don't want is, a panel box that's overloaded where you've got, 50,000 things in this little 100 amp panel or a 60 amp panel, and you're trying to run air conditioning, an electric furnace, and you're just overloading the system. So just use common sense there too. If need be, you can put on your report, should be evaluated by a licensed electrician. A licensed electrician will look at that. They'll be able to tell you if it's right or wrong. You can take pictures, videos, and present that data to the client so they can address that with their contractor. You just don't want outdated and deteriorating systems like knob and tube and uncovered wires. And sometimes we run into aluminum wire and knob and tube. Those are just old, antiquated, outdated types of wiring systems that were used before. Fuse boxes, same thing, they were used in the past. They're not current code. If you see them, call them out, have them put them on the bid, have them get them fixed. And then we talked about this earlier, but the proper lighting. Make sure that you can walk through that house in the dark, hit the light switches, get proper lighting so you're not going to have a health or safety issue.